welcome back to my YouTube channel, and we are on episode 9 today, and we are going to get down to discussing settlement expenses. So I'm in Texas, and we typically refer to settlement expenses as closing cost. That's what you hear us say. What are the closing costs? Okay, so first let's get into the definition. Settlement cost, also known as closing cost, are the fees that the buyer and or seller have to pay to complete the sale of the property. Depending on the lender, these may include origination fees, credit report fees, appraisal fees, as well as property taxes and recording fees. Okay, so keep that in mind, guys, depending on the lender. These fees may differ per lender. That's why you typically see many buyers getting various estimates, okay? Because they want to know who is going to give them the best deal and at the least cost. So as an agent, when a buyer asks you what the closing cost would be, never give them an exact number. We are not the loan officer. We are not the lender. Now, what I will do is give them a range, like, okay, rule of thumb, or, the norm based on this price of the home is you would, your closing costs would be somewhere in the realm of $6,000 to $9,000. You can kind of give them a range, but always refer them back to their lender. Anytime I give a client an idea of what their closing costs would or should be, I let them know, hey, ultimately your lender is the one who's responsible for that, and they'll give you, your exact number as well as a breakdown of where each fee applies. Okay, so that is what you want to do. You do not want to give your client a firm quote, because if it's $5 over, they're questioning you. All right. Now, closing costs can be paid by the other party. So it is very common for a buyer to ask the seller to pay a percentage or all of their closing costs, and that's typically fair play. Just know that the seller can agree to pay all or none. All right. So, the market now is slowed down. It's a little bit more, in the buyer's favor than it was, a while ago. So I'll ask for $2,000-$3,000 in closing costs. The seller could counter back and say, I won't give you $3,000, I'll give you $1,500. Or they can counter back and say, we won't pay any. Just depends. And if we were like 9 months ago when the market was ridiculous, you had buyers offering to pay the seller's closing cost. Okay, so there is the option one party can pay the others, but there can be limitations depending on your loan program. Okay, some loans only allow the other party to pay up to a certain percentage. Like I know when my husband, we were buying an investment property, based on the inspection, we got a reduction of $5,000. Well, initially the seller offered to put that towards our closing cost, but due to that loan, the seller was capped at the amount of money that they can contribute to my husband's closing. So we just asked them to reduce the price of the home by $5,000. Okay, so be aware of that as well. Just because you ask the seller to pay 100% of your settlement fees does not mean that will be possible, even if the seller were willing to do so. Your lender, your loan officer, will be the one to confirm that to you, though. All right, guys, understand that closing cost or settlement cost is completely separate from your down payment. Okay, so if your loan program requires a 3.5% down, as the typical FHA program does, then it's going to be that 3.5% plus that closing cost. So if your closing cost is $6,000 and your down payment is $3,500, then you are bringing $9,500 to the closing table. Okay, it is those together. So what I tell my clients to pay attention to whenever you get your estimates from your lender is look for the cash to close from borrower. Okay, that cash to close is going to include your closing cost as well as your down payment. It's going to be everything inclusive. Mine is any earnest money that you've already put down, or like if the seller has agreed to any contributions or price reductions, anything stemming from that inspection, they usually may change the numbers after the contract. Your loan estimate should change accordingly. Okay, so I hope I've given you all a good breakdown of settlement expenses. Remember, realtors, we never want to quote our client an exact number. We may want to give them an idea of a range to prepare them for what they need to have in the bank financially, but always refer them back to their lender. Refer them back to the lender, because ultimately those are the ones who have their the final say on what the closing costs are and what the fees are. All right, so that's it for this week, and I'll see you guys back for episode 10.